A painted door frame at the bottom of my stairs. Pencil marks going back to 1982. 4 different hands, 4 decades. A name beside every one. Men used to come back after 5 years away and stand under that frame like boys. I would lay the ruler flat on their head and make the mark. In 41 years, I never once wrote a mark higher than the one already there. Every man who came back was shorter than he used to be. Not one of them was in pain. Has anyone ever told you to stand up straighter and you did it for about 9 seconds? Put it in the comments. This is the kind of thing Strength After 60 covers. Subscribe so you catch the next one. I want to start by taking something away from you, because everything after it depends on this. You have been told your whole life that bad posture is why your back hurts. Your mother said it, your foreman said it, and every man selling a brace or a strap has said it since before I opened the room. In 2019, the Journal of Orthopaedic and Sports Physical Therapy published a viewpoint by a group of clinicians who had gone back through the evidence. Their finding was that there is no evidence correct posture prevents or reduces pain and disability. They went further. They wrote that there is no strong evidence that any single spinal curvature is strongly associated with pain. Read that twice, because it is the opposite of what you have been sold. Then a review this year pulled together 10 studies on the shoulder specifically and found something that should have ended the argument 30 years ago. The resting kyphosis angle does not distinguish the men who have shoulder pain from the men who do not. 2 men, same curve in the same spine, measured the same way. One of them hurts and one does not, and the angle cannot tell you which. So the thing everybody has been measuring is not the thing that causes the pain. Now, let me be careful, because this is where most men making a video like this go off a cliff. They read that and run out and tell you posture does not matter. That is not what the evidence says, and it is not what I watched happen to the men on that door frame. A hospital trust in Cambridge puts it plainly in the material they hand to patients. There is no clear evidence that bad posture causes back or other joint pain. And in the same breath, they say that once you already have pain, your posture affects it. Both are true at once. The curve does not cause the hurt. It costs you something else entirely, and nobody sells you that because it will not fit on a package. I spent 41 years watching that cost arrive, and I never had a number for it. I had a door frame and a bad feeling. Here is the number. The same review that killed the pain claim ran the other direction on range of motion, and the evidence there is not thin at all. It is a clean dose response. As the curve in the upper back increases, shoulder flexion drops. So does abduction, and so does the ability to rotate the arm outward. 7 degrees, that is what it takes. A 7-degree increase in the curve of your upper back produces a reduction in shoulder range that the researchers call clinically meaningful, and it does that independently of pain. You cannot see 7 degrees in a mirror. Your wife cannot see it. I could not see it on a man standing in front of me under fluorescent light, and I looked at men for a living. But you can see the arm that stops lower than the other one. The literature has a name for this pattern now. They call it spine and shoulder syndrome, and the finding underneath it is that increased curve independently predicts limited shoulder flexion and abduction in men your age. Not associated with, predicts. And there is a second half to that finding that I want you to hold on to, because it is the part that pays you back. Across those 10 studies, an erect posture consistently improved shoulder range in men who hurt and in men who did not. The curve is not costing you comfort. It is costing you the top shelf. Now, the part where I part company with almost every man making this kind of video, I am not going to tell you to stand up straighter. Standing up straighter is a 9-second fix that you have already tried 1,000 times. And if it worked, that door frame would have one mark on it going the other way. There are three things I want to put in front of you instead. A test you can run in the next 10 seconds. What failing it actually predicts, which is the part that changed how I think about all of this. And the honest dose, including the part I will not tell you. Do the test while the video is running. All three of them take longer to explain than to do. Ed Soa ran a crane at the mill for 31 years and came down my stairs on Thursdays. Ed was not strong. He was patient, which lasts longer. The winter Ed turned 72, he stopped being able to get his head back against the wall when he leaned on it to pull his boots off. He stood there with his shoulders touching and his chin floating out in front of him, and he never said a word, and neither did I. 2 years later, he went down on the ice outside his own garage. Here is your test. Do it now. Find a wall with nothing on it. Put your heels against it and your backside too. Keep your eyes level and look straight ahead, not up. Now let the back of your head go where it wants to go. If it touches the wall without you reaching for it, you are fine and you can stop worrying about this. If it does not touch, measure the gap with your fingers. The clinical threshold is about 6.5 centimeters. Call it 2.5 inches. That is the point where researchers, comparing this test against an actual X-ray, found it reliably picked out the men with a real curve. And the reason I trust that test is what happens when you hand it to somebody who is not a doctor. When they ran the reliability on the version measured at the 7th vertebra, 3 different people took the measurement: a health professional, a volunteer with no training, and a family caregiver. The agreement between all 3 ran from 0.85 to 0.99. That is a test that does not care who holds the ruler. There are not many of those. Now the numbers. And I want you to hear these as steady rather than frightening. Between 20 and 40% of men past 60 have a curve beyond the line researchers draw at 40 degrees. 2 in 5, worst case. Most of you watching will pass the wall test, and if you do, this video is about somebody else. But in 2004, a doctor named Deborah Kado published something in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society that I still cannot quite get over. She had older men and women lie flat on a table, then slid wooden blocks under their heads, one at a time, until the head was level. Blocks about 2/3 of an inch thick. She counted them. 1 block or more, and she called it hyperkyphosis. Then she followed those people for years. The ones who needed the blocks died sooner. Not from falls, not from one cause, all causes. And that held after they adjusted for age, body mass, arthritis, smoking, whether the person walked, whether the person climbed stairs, and how they rated their own emotional health. A stack of wood on a table predicted who was going to die. That is a carpenter's measurement doing the work of a hospital. Her group kept going. In 2005, the same posture tracked with poor physical function, and in 2007 with injurious falls, which is the one that made me think about Ed on the ice. Then in 2022, a separate team followed a community cohort in Japan and found the same posture tied to loss of independence and to mortality on the other side of the world in a different population. Which part of that lands harder for you? That a stack of wooden blocks predicted it, or that nobody has ever run it on you? Now, I owe you the limits of what I just said, because I am not going to sell you a finding that was not measured on men. Kado ran a follow-up in 2009 in the Annals of Internal Medicine, showing the mortality link held independently of osteoporosis in the spine. That study was women. The 2004 work covered both sexes, and that is the one I am leaning on. If a man tells you the osteoporosis finding applies to you, ask him where he read it. And nobody has proven the curve is what kills you rather than a flag flying over something else. That question is open, and the honest researchers say so. What is not open is that the men who needed the blocks were on a different road. I told you about Walt Kubiak in the last video. Open hearth at the mill, second shift, then Tuesday mornings with me for 26 years. Walt pressed 135 pounds over his head the week he turned 64. Walt did not stop pressing because his shoulder hurt. He stopped because the bar started catching on something at the top and he could not tell me where. He would get it to about eye level clean, and then the last few inches turned into a negotiation. No pain and no click either, just a ceiling that was not there in the spring. That is what 7 degrees feels like from the inside. It does not announce itself. It just quietly moves the top of your reach down and lets you assume you got weaker. Here is your second test, and this one you run tomorrow rather than now, because it needs a wall and a straight face. Stand with your back flat against that same wall. Raise both arms straight up in front of you and take them overhead, keeping the backs of your hands moving toward the wall behind you and your lower back flat. Watch where each one stops. If one arm reaches the wall and the other stalls out 4 inches short, you have found the thing. Not a shoulder problem, a rib cage problem wearing a shoulder problem's coat. The chain runs upstream, and this is the piece almost nobody explains properly. A study in manual therapy took 51 older adults and measured the curve, the head position, and the neck range. Greater curve tracked with a worse head position at a correlation of minus 0.48. And the head position was what actually limited the neck turning, not the curve directly. The curve pushes the head forward. The head forward is what costs you the neck. So when you chase this with chin tucks, you are treating the last domino. The fix runs the same direction the problem does, upstream. You put the work into the muscles that hold the upper back extended, and you put the load somewhere the curve has to argue with. Rows with your chest supported so your lower back is not quietly doing the job instead. Something heavy carried a distance, where the weight pulls you forward and you refuse it. And overhead work at whatever range you actually own today, rather than the one you had at 50. Now the last thing, and this is the one where I'm going to disappoint you on purpose. Ray Dombrowski pulled 315 pounds off my floor at 71 years old. Same bar, same basement, 40 years. Ray never took anything you cannot buy for $1, and he never did anything clever. What Ray did was never miss a Tuesday. I bring him up because the question you are asking right now is how long this takes, and the honest answer is the least popular thing in this video. In 2017, a research group in San Francisco ran a trial. 112 people over 60, all with a curve past 40 degrees. A physical therapist ran them in groups of 10, 1 hour, twice a week for 3 months. The men and women who trained improved by 3.8 degrees on the clinical measure. The ones waiting got worse by 1 degree. But when they went back to the actual X-rays, the change did not reach statistical significance. The same group ran it again at a higher dose. 99 people, 1 hour, 3 times a week for 6 months. That version moved both the clinical measure and the X-ray. Twice a week for 3 months moved the feel of it. 6 months at 3 times a week moved the structure. There is your dose. And it runs to about 78 hours of work. Every other man making this video tells you most men over 60 have this problem. I went and looked it up before I filmed. The figure everybody quotes is 73%. It comes from a study published in 1992, and it was run on adults aged 20 to 50. It is not your decade, and it is not your number. Yours is 2 in 5. I am not going to inflate a statistic to make you feel more broken than you are. And 2 more things I owe you. The first is that when researchers pooled these trials and rated their own confidence, the picture is thinner than anyone selling posture work admits. Quality of life improved at moderate confidence. Pain came down a little, rated low. Getting out of a chair improved by about 1/4 of a second, rated very low. And the effect on how often people actually fell was uncertain, with the range crossing straight through, no effect at all. No serious harm was reported in any of those trials. But if I told you this fixes falls, I would be going further than the evidence goes, and doing the exact thing I opened this video by accusing everyone else of. The second thing is the one that bothers me most. Across those trials, the outcome that improved most reliably was how the men and women felt about the way they looked. I ran a room for 41 years, and I never once cared what a man looked like. I cared what he could still pick up. So I am not selling you that, even though it is the strongest result on the sheet. The wall does not care how you look either. It only tells you whether your head still gets back there. The curve is not why your back hurts, and any man who tells you otherwise is repeating something that got taken apart in 2019. What it costs you is 7 degrees of reach, a shorter mark on the doorframe, and a place in the group Kado's wooden blocks picked out and followed. 41 years of men came down those stairs, and the ones still moving at 80 were never the ones you would have picked at 40. They were not the strongest. They were the ones who kept getting measured against something on a regular basis, and who did not look away from the number. Go find a wall. Heels back, eyes level. Let your head fall where it falls. If it does not touch, that gap is the one to work on first, and I will show you exactly how in the next one. Subscribe to Strength After 60 and you will catch it.